Hey guys, let's start.
In times like these, being a citizen is a big job. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the virtues of self-rule and debate the state of our republic. Welcome to the Citizens Prerogative Podcast. This is the voice of your nerdy host, Michael Piscitelli, and we are blessed with a co-host whose passion for our republic precedes him wherever he goes, Raymond Wong Jr.
Hello.
This is episode 14, season 2, and it's part 3. It's a 3-episode journey here, covering the Freedom Contract. So Freedom Contract part 3, we've already covered the freedom from oppression, some of our positioning on that. We wrapped up the immediately previous episode, Freedom from Poverty. And so with this episode, we're going to go ahead and, or maybe we didn't wrap it up, but we're going to revisit it and connect it to the next and final topic for the series, this mini-series, freedom from ignorance. So it's the 3 freedoms: oppression, poverty, and ignorance.
I mean, I feel like that we should have started with poverty in some ways because when you think about it, it's kind of foundational, right? Even going back further to part 1, oppression, you know, you can't even fight oppression if you're in poverty. It's almost like it's the biggest hurdle, and it's the purposeful hurdle put in place by the people in power. I'm not saying that you did any wrong formatting there, Mike. Great delivery though.
Hey, it's quite all right. I think meander is the term, the modus operandus, or whatever that word is. I'm way outside of my lane now. I agree. Poverty it's a mechanism and an artifact of our system. An artifact being like, well, it's a side effect to a certain degree that we haven't chosen to mitigate. And it affects everything. It really does. It's oppressive in so many ways, and for different reasons for different people. Right? All of our lives are a little bit different, so we experience it in different ways and at different points during our lives, growing up from adolescence and whatnot. But bringing it closer to home, transitioning from poverty and freedom from ignorance. It makes me think about, there was an article I read, Ray and I were talking about it a little bit before we started this episode, and I will go and try and find it, seek it out again so that I can put it in the show notes. But essentially, I believe the title was something to the effect of, does poverty cause people to be stupid, or is it just that stupid people are poor? Right. It's like, is this a chicken or an egg thing? It's, because the system would kind of make you think, well, poor people must be dumb or lazy or incapable. Like there's something wrong with that person if they're not mega rich in our system. That is a really, I think, ever-present, effervescent message. And, it really holds people back.
It's a circular argument, right? I hate to say it, but to me, I would equate that same thought to black on black violence, right? People bring that up, but it's actually quite an ignorant comment because the larger issue is that we have a black concentration, that we have ghettos, and that we have these depressed neighborhoods, right? So that kind of ignores it and negates. So what you're saying, exactly, Michael, it's a circular argument. I hope I'm placing that right.
Yeah, and it's an argument that's specifically designed to make people feel accustomed or in their place in the system as it is, which doesn't benefit them. And then it's like, well, just accept your lot in life because you must be dumb. Like it's some unchangeable feature of you. And so this article, I want to believe it was a scholarly article because they were talking about the results of various studies. I assume sociological studies or whatnot. And the premise of the whole thing was about, the chicken or the egg question. And the findings were, to me, astonishing, eye-opening, and made me feel like the weight of sadness um, when I realized the message of this thing. And it's basically that if somebody is in poverty, they will be affected cognitively, and it will show up in IQ scores. It will show up. It shows up in so many measurements. And that was the point of these studies, was to show, well, how accurate are IQ tests? How accurate are these measurements of things that we don't really understand? It's just numbers we came up with that seem to, correlate to something, right? And so they're digging into this. And the more they dug into it, they realized, um, no, the environmental effects of poverty, of living the life of poverty, causes these things. It's not just your physical health, which affects your brain. It's in your body. It's everything from physical health to mental health, and to the points that Ray has been making time and time again, that this distraction. Now they have much clearer terms around some of these things, but the idea that, if we only have so much time on earth, and what occupies that time in your mind, in your thought space, there's a price to that. And if all that ever is occupying your mind is, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to eat? How's my kid going to get through college? Whatever that recurring theme is, wherever you are, whatever caste you're a part of, for people that are experiencing poverty and are hungry and are worried about homelessness, or are homeless and worried about something else, that becomes all consuming. And it shows up in all of these studies. And so it really begged the question about, how we're treating each other humanity wise. It's not just like a perceived fairness or a perceived slight. It is the quality of life. And it is vastly different cognitively, experientially, and, for the pursuit of happiness. Poverty is the single biggest indicator to control that.
I think that the Capitol attack, it's still, timely with everything that we're discussing, is that, poverty and ignorance, ignorance in particular, is what I want to look at as what happened at the Capitol. Is that we have to see that there was a grievance there, and there was not a legitimate grievance of the election, but there was a grievance of ignorance. So those people, to me, more than ever, as I continue to think about this episode we've been doing over the last couple days, is that I feel sorry for these individuals, and I feel like the Republic owes them something also, because of not freeing them from ignorance. So we can see the exact issue at play right there on the Capitol. And you can feel a lot of different emotions. But if we're a good republic, that you should feel all the emotions, which is the anger and the distrust and the treason, but also, how did we get here? And that's because we did not fulfill a freedom of ignorance for these people.
And there's no one answer. I mean, one of the biggest travesties is people are suffering and they want the one answer, the one cause. And it's systematic. It's many causes to many people. It reminds me of something I want to do at some point, which is like come up with these fishbone diagrams. I don't know if you've ever heard of fishbone diagrams. Yeah. For root cause analysis. And it's like, okay, I just want to show all the factors that lead to this thing. So anytime somebody says, oh, we can't do that because it'll cause that, you're like, no, actually, there's a lot more involved, just to kind of get some of the imagery out there. But I digress.
Yeah, I think like for fish bones, you choke on them. That's what I'll break it down for everyone. So there's a lot of bones in a fish, and business is complex, and it's not, you can't just cut it one way, right? And
No.
fishbone diagrams kind of they break down the multiple layers, and it's a way of really getting down to the nitty gritty on something, but also understanding that everyone sees the Apple product, right? Everyone sees the iPhone, but it's what it takes to get to the head of the fish, right? So much funnels into it. So
That's
I
right.
think that's true for our democracy. This is not a failure only of the head of state at the federal level. It's a failure locally. So these local states and local state leaders and education systems and frankly, it behooves us to have free education, right?
It's a
Because
failure of imagination in the mind of the American people. We have not elected representatives because there's not been a vision. We haven't asked for it, apparently. I mean, maybe we have.
we've chosen not to. We've spoken about this in previous episodes. We've spoken about when you lose the creativity or the idea that you think, and I might be even getting mixed up with some of our Facebook Live stuff, but it is when you start to when you stop thinking about what could be better and you start just accepting what is, and you fight for what is rather than what could be. And that's the trouble, is what could be, you have to have that freedom from ignorance, and you have to have freedom from, frankly, poverty, in my opinion, to even start to think about that stuff. And that's why, like you said, Michael, I keep preaching us being stuck in traffic all day, us
Yeah.
being stuck in the 9 to 5 at a office is all to keep you from achieving that freedom.
Well, it ends up having that effect for sure. And keeps us distracted. So the best way for us to relieve our stress is to play a video game or whatever it is. And I'm not picking on anybody who plays a video game, but I think about there's a lot of hours for some people that goes into it. And that's something that wasn't always there before. That time was spent at that time in life for an individual was spent doing very different things. And so, technology's caused a lot of changes for us. I digress, but poverty will prevent you from learning anything. And if you're poor at birth, you don't have a chance. What are you going to learn? It's going to be very difficult to learn. I mean, first of all, you can put a book in front of someone. First of all, they have to know how to read, right? And then in the concepts that are in the book, be able to formulate all of that. So it's not a matter of people having access to words on a page. It's even more fundamental to that. And keep in mind that evolutionarily speaking, as humans, as animals, we learn so much more from observing our environment than we do with these newfangled ways of ingesting knowledge. And so you just think about an environment of poverty, growing up in that. It's one thing to grow up not in poverty and fall into it, right? That's a very different journey. It's a very different story. But we have so many children that never had a chance. We have so many children that are too hungry to learn, who don't have the resources or don't have access. And COVID now is even exacerbating those things. And in order for this system to function without oligarchy, without a king, without strong leadership at the top, in order for it to actually be a democracy of self-rule, we have to be free enough to know how to self-rule. Otherwise, they're going to take it away. It wasn't always ours. It didn't start out as ours. We've earned it. We've won it. And now they've realized, well, if we just take some of this back, all we have to do is dumb everybody down a little bit. Let's not invest in education or anything anymore. And they'll see how dangerous and unstable the system will become without these wonderful elites to run it for them. And we've seen some of that happening. We've seen some of this attempt to claw back from us our democracy, right? To give it to the representatives more than us.
We fought for the nation. We killed for this nation. And I can't wait till we get more into the Revolutionary War and such, and we can talk about those stories. Those are episodes I look forward to, because you talk about what it took to free us from a king, and then this ideal that a people would rule themselves. But don't forget that ideal that we focus so much on did not include blacks, did not include women, did not include people that did not own land. There was a huge segment of the population that was left out of that freedom ideal. But we've evolved, we've come so far, right? So that's why we have to, I don't know, what confuses me is why people don't understand that freedom's malleable, because we've done it so much, right? In our 200 plus year history, we've already shifted it so much.
We show this full scale, the full breadth of capacity to have so much freedom for a group to own other humans outright, right? To the freedom of, true egalitarian. We've done every experiment in
We've
those
done it all. We've
extremes.
had a true oligarchy at the helm. We've done it all. That was fun. The experiment, that is true freedom. But the unfortunate thing is the only people that are experiencing this and playing with it are the people at the top, and we need to
Mhm.
change that. We all should be free from poverty and free from oppression. And even if you're making a good six figure, you're still not free from oppression and poverty. You're just the wrong move away from a bad economy, away from it, the edge.
It's more like Icarus. Yeah, you're just further. You're closer to the sun. You're further from the ground. So if you fall, it's a further way to go. That's how I feel. It doesn't matter. No matter how well I was able to do, suddenly I realized, wait a minute, nothing about this is right. I'm not feeling any better or safer at all by earning more money. I'm feeling a different kind of risk. I'm preoccupied, worried about a different set of worries. It's a fantastical shift, that adaptation to the new environment. It's so swift and so severe. Our system doesn't give you a moment to recognize anything's happening. I've experienced it. It makes me nervous talking about it even now. I can't
The question-
imagine, right? Like if I'm sorry, Ray, but I mean, if you and I were born maybe, seven figures instead of zero figures, um, and then climb to several billion, maybe we would feel the fear the same way. I don't know, but look at the scales. I mean, the scales are just absolutely astronomically asinine.
I don't know if it's almost like when people achieve this freedom from the oppression, when these people have achieved true freedom from oppression, true freedom from poverty, right? There's just
Well,
so much
do they
money.
know it? They're in a different maze of the rat race. They think,
It's well, they're looking at the rat race though, and they're like, I cannot
yeah,
be those people again. And
yeah.
there's this unfounded fear that they themselves or their children will become subject, or their descendants. Oh my goodness, and no one in my family should ever live like this again. And
Mm.
that's the problem. There should be a social safety net, so that is not what you care about. What you care about is improving your station and improving your fellow man, and everything else takes care of itself, right? Because the state, the economy, sorry, the economy, I can't say state because then I'm a communist. The economy will provide, right? The universal basic income will provide
Yeah, we build a system that takes care of everybody for
resilience, to use your
participating.
word. What was it
Yes,
that first
resilience.
season? Resilience system. Yeah, I'm feeling very mid-roll-ish.
Let's hear a word from our sponsor. Fulfilling a dream where all possess an intrinsic love for self-rule that is reciprocated with free speech and equal justice under the law. Citizen Do-Good values all of the amendments of the Constitution, along with the original core documents. It all forms a framework and an operating manual for the Republic, and it provides us with the means to change with the times. Oh, goodness, the times are now to deeply re-examine our current implementation of governance for the dawning of a very, very new day. We are a proud sponsor of the Citizens Prerogative podcast, a major partner in spreading the good word about civic love and the power of change for us all. Help us stay on mission and grow this community by rating the podcast with 5 stars in your favorite app. If you don't feel you can rate us with 5 stars, let us know why on our sponsor's Facebook page, Citizen Do Good. Like the page to help out even further. Also, make sure you join our newsletter at citizendogood.com. You'll get updates every couple of months on all of our antics, not just the podcast. While you're there, check out the shop with all your favorite merch. Or go ahead and add a project contribution into your cart. Feel free to share any suggestions you have directly through our Contact Us page. Thank you for your support. So, Ray, I feel like we've been jumping on this one chord about the chicken or the egg around poverty, and ignorance, and I hope that we've sufficiently painted the dots or connected the dots there so that people are now thinking about this this sense of this poverty it goes beyond just being unfair. I mean, it is wrong. It's morally wrong. It's apprehensible, and it's a choice. It's a function of a system that we created and we sustain and we maintain. So let's change it.
Right.
Um, I
And I
yeah.
just want to say, I'm glad you said choice, because I was thinking the same thing. It is a choice. There was a time when I understood we were a developing economy, right? But there was a threshold that we hit at some point where it no longer became acceptable for poverty to exist in our country. And I don't know if that was the turn of the century, but they, at least they moved the needle then. They can at least take some credit that they pushed the needle throughout the 1900s. What are we going to do in the 20s?
Well, the first thing we need to do, maybe two things: healthcare. But thankfully, the road to healthcare has already begun getting braided or get paved. The other thing we can do is make some real inroads in freeing people from ignorance, and in ways other than what we've done before, right? We're not talking about funding education alone. Like, I mean, we are talking about funding, but not funding the system and the model that exists today. Right? Like that's always been a bit of a thorn for me, and I've always tuned into that. It's like always been this debate. We have to be very cautious about false choices and false dichotomies. And I was always confused by this debate about, well, we need to fund our schools, and then on the other side of the fence, it wasn't we need to defund our schools. It was, yeah, but that money's being wasted. And I'm like, oh, well, yes, I also agree with that. Yes, we need to fund education, and yes, we should not be wasting the money. Both of those things are actually true. Those are not choices. Those are not opposing choices. They shouldn't be opposing choices. And and vouchers and school choice for profit necessarily is for profit for education is proving itself not worth my time to talk about because it's BS. And I think I'm hoping it's being demonstrated over and over again, but maybe we'll do an episode just on that. Again, I digress. I mean, this thing about education, and yeah, we fund the wrong system. We fund a system from the past. We never invested in upgrading it, changing it, enhancing it so it's actually teaching people how to operate in not just today's world, but tomorrow's world, more importantly.
Did you really digress? Because I just want to go back to the fact of for-profit education. Are you kidding me? For-profit education and for-profit prison have an equal place in hell if I believed in hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lack of I have nothing good to say about that. I agree. It's painful, but at the same time, it's not like we advocate people can steal and do all kinds of things, right? That's the false dichotomy. That's what happens with the defund the police and all of that. It's like, oh, well then, and then what? It's like, okay, well, naturally we all want to feel safe. Like that false sense of security is very important to all of us. And we want to see real things to help reinforce that false sense of security. We all want that, but we also don't want to be murdered by that system.
It's true. And it's constitutional. So I always remind people because they do get very passionate about it. So I find it a good time to use the old parchment to calm them down and say, look, the right to tranquility, right? But so you have that right in the Constitution, but that same sentence, that same, section talks about the right of people to assemble and the right of individuals to have their free speech. So we have to balance all of those together. And in nowhere does it say the police have the right to kill.
No. No, for any of those podcast listeners out there who have a diverse diet, Behind the Bastards is a a series that I listen to often. And there was a whole group of episodes that they had done about the history of the police and police unions and things like that. And it was incredibly insightful and eye-opening and entertaining because of the host and hosts, plural, I suspect. But in any case, yeah, I mean, it's almost it's almost how we think about the flag, like the Pledge of Allegiance and the flag. Like these were all things that were added on. The police, as we know it today, as it's been implemented, is just one version, just one possible way of solving that problem. And it just got replicated because it was originally implemented for a different purpose,
So that's
not to
I
protect
love
and
that you brought
serve.
it up. Like, so this is the practice of oppression. Okay, so what systems are in place now that oppress us and were created for different purpose? So the police, which was for controlling slavery, right?
Yeah, slave
Um, and
recapture and all
and
that.
recapturing slaves that escaped. So all throughout mine, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, which was used to control prohibition. It was an armed wing of the
Mm.
U.S. government. And then once they got rid of prohibition, because they said, "Oh, that's a stupid rule," they then focused on taxes and other income that the government was generating.
Wow. We have a way, well, and like how much civil rights are all hinged on the Commerce Clause. There's a whole episode. Now it's escaping my memory what specifically the podcast could have been. It could have been more perfect. I don't know. That's another good one about the courts. But yeah, I mean, we've had to work our ways into pretzels because the system was built, around a big idea, a big promise, and it had to bring together people with very different perspectives.
And it's our government's riddled with stuff like this, folks, and we're going to
Uh,
continue to pull back the onion. But I like the what is it, the federal excise tax on our phone bills still. What is
mhm.
that? Is that the Spanish
Oh,
Indian War? I
probably. I
think
don't.
it's.
Got me.
I mean, I may have it completely off
You
base, but I
bested
believe
me.
we're paying for a very old war.
There's all kinds of stuff in there. I was looking. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so freedom from ignorance. Getting back on topic.
Well, it is. It's all that because the point is that if you're not paying attention to what's being presented to you, and all these companies are providing you and selling your data, right? So you may be ignorant, but that phone in your hand is generating billions of dollars in activity for a third party, and everybody's benefiting. The whole government, everybody's at the party, but you. You live in ignorance and poverty, and it's designed that way. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox, Mike.
Mm-hmm. And I can't disagree. So some of the notes that we had captured for this section are things like making sure that people are provided with the knowledge and skills to participate in the pursuit of happiness. Wouldn't it be funny if we went back to the original document? The whole point, the reason why, what the problem we were trying to solve when we formed the Constitution, Declaration of Independence. Can't forget that one. It's so good. So, I mean, if the whole point of all of this is to be free to pursue happiness, wouldn't we change some things? The first thing being, that's the first thing you learn. You come across the border, you come out of your parent, your mom, wherever. The first thing you learn is the Constitution is your Bible. No, but that we need to be imbued with the ability to take advantage of our inalienable rights and to pursue happiness. And our system should be like teaching people to do that, right? This is a very special thing. There aren't a lot of places on earth where you have the opportunity to do something like that. It should be cherished. The other thing we were talking about on here is providing a full view of humanity and human knowledge around anthropology and people's histories and society and civics, and be damned with the controversy. I think it's really important for us as an enlightened as a society born out of the Enlightenment, that we are first and foremost teaching people how to think and how to understand things. And the best place to start, the most interesting place I think for people to start is with themselves. So learn about your history, learn about where your biology came from, learn about the history of the world that we live on, right? Those are really neat things. They're very interesting and in depth. Now, it's controversial because we have a problem with separation of church and state. We have a lot of problems because we really haven't been good about maintaining our separation of church and state and freedom from any official state religion. And it's infected in a lot of things. And it's like, if you want to teach your children and your family and share those ideas and views, you're allowed to do that, but don't interfere with our ability to raise good citizens that have a capability, that are capable and knowledgeable and able to not just take care of themselves, but help take care of the republic.
And I don't know if doing prayer in the morning or pledge allegiance to the flag effectively builds good citizens. I think when it comes to education, we've really gotten away from. I would rather you take that 1 minute a day and dedicate it to teaching them some civics, right? Or just combine it into a course over the year, because it is a waste of time. It's propaganda. And even as a child growing up, I used to get very upset, and I was slightly protested it, but I didn't push it too heavy because they put you in detention too quick, and I didn't like it. So really had a problem at a young age in elementary school when they forced you to pledge the allegiance to the flag, because the Constitution doesn't require that of me at all.
No, no. And somewhere in here, I'll bring it up at some point. I'm always rewriting that pledge. Because I like the idea of having a pledge, even though
Yes.
it's also makes me crawl a little bit. But anything that can help inspire people in the ideals, the true ideals, not the under God, um, and not to the flag. So I got to go find some of my rewrites because I try to write out the flag and I try to write out God, because flag and God don't mean anything.
Right. Those are human constructs.
It's Constitution. If I recall correctly, I think I was replacing it with Constitution under the stars. So what is it? What is it if you play it back that way? I pledge allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America,
And
and
to the
to the
republic
republic for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation.
under the stars, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Like,
I felt like one nation under unity, with liberty and justice for all. This probably isn't the forum to debate
we'll figure
anything
it
like
out.
that. But
Anyway,
I think what it's important, what we're trying to say is that the education system is spending their time somewhere, right? We're not even arguing
yes.
about that allegiance. We're arguing whether we should add prayer to the daily allegiance. And frankly, it's doing nothing but indoctrinating people with, this is the system, this is what we accept, you bow to authority. And that's actually not the American way. That's not how it started. And in fact, the founding fathers fought until their dying days on things. They fought about things till the end.
And here we are. So there's only one more. There's one more bullet I had for something thought provoking under freedom from ignorance, and it's to ensure that people learn about their environment and environment broadly, like their place among it and how to navigate it using reason and decision making. So the environment not just being like the ecosystem on Earth, but the people around them, the experiences, the events, the things that they see, how they're influenced by, again, how we learn. We learn most through observation until we're able, even after we're able to verbally communicate. There's that idea, oh, are you a visual learner or are you an audio learner? Yeah, we're all kinds of learners, and we're definitely geared more towards the visual and the audio because we've been using those forever. Not forever. That's what anthropology is there to teach you about. But um, making sure that we're able to operate in and among one another, society, it's the most basic function. And with technology and how numerous we've become and how geographically spread out we've become, even the youngest generation, you can see where, the socialization, the in person or otherwise socialization among people has changed. And it's not in an intentional way. It's not in a thoughtful way, right? None of these things are being done in an intentional and thoughtful way, right? We talked about the fishbone diagram. So all the fishbones connected to the spine lead to the head. All these contributing factors leading to a common cause, to a problem in the fish head, or the reverse, however you want to do the analysis. But the idea is there's an accumulation of things. It's an accumulation of distractions from many things that we should be paying attention to or learning about early on. So, we need to fundamentally come after this. And I will bring it up. I'll put it in the show notes. There was another podcast. This is probably the third call out, Future Hindsight, one that I've been sampling recently. And there's a educator, sociology teacher. I forget what the background is, and I apologize again, but I'll put it in the show notes so you can refer to it. Really good ideas about this concept about shifting the purpose of education and redesigning it so that it's actually teaching people how to think and how to solve problems, and how to think big and think different and come together, right? I mean, everything we've ever accomplished in business, anything we've ever built tall, we've done it together. Anything
Or
worth building.
tests. But
Yeah.
the test is doing it together. The test is accomplishing a goal as a team, right? So dynamic. I'll tell you my secret wish, Michael, and don't be upset because I know I'm working for you now, but I want to do education, like have a school where children are excited to go to school and they're engaged
Oh,
and they grow all the way through. And school is more like running a business for the individual. Every individual chooses their growth and development path in school, and the school does not build these holes and stick you in them. The school says, all right, we've got all these future business and future politicians, and we tailor our classes and our structure to the students instead of saying, by the way, here's all we're serving is turkey or turkey,
cake
which
or
is the
death.
current school system. Yeah. I know you don't even cake or death. I'd love that because that's a variety. No, they're serving turkey or turkey at school.
Oh gosh. It's so true. Teach the kids how to teach themselves and how to learn, because guess whatever subject they go and get their degree in, they're probably not going to go make money with. And maybe they do, but for how long? And should they? Are these things lifetime endeavors? That doesn't make sense.
Is
Who
that happiness?
live, right, for 120 years if you're just meandering from one thing you hate to another thing you hope you hate less?
Yeah. Do you feel liberated? Does your job make you feel liberated? Well, no. Well, you have a right to feel liberated. And I do. Well, how do I secure that? Maybe universal basic income, right? So you can sit back and read a book for a couple of years and figure out what you want to do. It's your dream. It's your American dream.
Yeah, in the short term, that reminds me, Ray, of a call to action that I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I don't mind putting it on air right now. I mentioned planks and platforms earlier, and especially around this education thing and these freedoms, these ideas about promoting these freedoms. One of the things we want to do is get this kind of boiled down to some point, and hopefully with listener feedback and other, ongoing stuff we're doing. But I want to formulate, and I hate pledges and things, but I want a way to know who's running for office that really believes and would fight for these things for real, right? Has the votes, has the record. Like at some point, we can talk about this all day long. We really need to start showing the path, the light for all of us to start changing who writes the laws, to be people who align with these ideals that take us back towards the direction of fulfilling the true full promise for everybody. So we won't be fighting. We won't be trying to burn down the cap. People will be so much more fulfilled. They won't be spending their time doing these things. That's my earnest belief. And I believe that is what the founders kind of hopefully had in mind with the Declaration of Independence. I know they had some short-term interests, but the biggest thoughts, the biggest thinkers at that table, I hoped were kind of imagining having something like this that we're talking about.
I think that prosperity was a little more achievable at their time because you could work the land, you could do things to really kind of to change your station in America because it was in a growth and development, all this limitless resource. But now we don't nearly have that, right? So we've made the oppression and the playing field and the runway so long and so steep that you just need so much to get up and going that only a fraction of businesses make it and only a fraction of people make it through school and only a fraction. That should be a problem. Everyone says, oh, we use that as a soothing like a coping mechanism, I think. Oh, don't worry, half of all businesses fail in their first 90 days or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, we should ask, whoa, wait, why do businesses fail?
Why aren't these people prepared?
What can we do better?
What can we do better? That's a
How
failure.
can we enable them? How can we enable them?
And this is not an argument to run government like business. Don't ever get that twisted. There's a reason they're separate. I mean, that's where, in my opinion, that's where communism belongs. That's where authoritarianism belongs, right? I've yet to see any company run like a democracy.
Yeah, there's no democracy companies. They are all authoritarian.
Yeah.
I mean, it needs to be run that way.
How else? Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, again, I'm open to a lot of things.
So there's a place for all these things. We already have them. People are throwing these words around. It's like, come on.
Business is an authoritarian. You're right. So let's not get too deep into it, right? But if people are upset about socialism and authoritarianism and dictatorships, it's like every corporate structure is a dictatorship.
Yeah. So it's not just that thing. It's about the fact that we have a different vision for our society.
But freedom from ignorance, the freedom to understand that we're all living in all these microcosms, micro societies and micro experiments going on. But the good news is, folks, the documents will always kind of circle around the Constitution. I really like Arizona state constitution. I'm not a big education person, but it says that education should be as free as possible in Arizona. And as you know, Arizona state has one of the highest tuitions around, and our Constitution says it should be as free as possible. So get back to the Constitution.
There's a generation of Californians that received a college diploma for free at some point in time. So, there's proven ways to do these things, and it takes all of us to, I hate that phrase, wake up, but it takes that, but to wake up to something specific, not this, wake up to nothing. Because right, everybody can use it I want to make sure we're going to be pointing to these planks, these freedoms that we want to achieve. And like you said, Ray, we don't have to go far. It all goes back to the Declaration. And then everything that stemmed from it. Please go reread the Constitution. It's not long. Some of the words are old.
Or you can trust us to interpret it. We'll help.
Yeah,
we'll help along the way, and we'll be open to the discussion. But I think you said it early on. The words escape me correctly, Michael, but we have a social responsibility. Those of us that achieve the next level, that achieve the freedom, because unfortunately, the pay-to-play system. You said may have experienced it yourself as well. As you start to hit a certain change, your stress changes, your risk changes, and everyone gets nervous about how do I sustain this and how do you keep it? Because frankly, the ball is bigger if it drops, when you start making more money. But I think that fear turns into anger or hate, like the Jedi would say. And so I think that all these people in these positions of power and money have to be more benevolent, less fearful.
A lot of them are, internalizing some cognitive dissonance about how they feel about having that money, right? They're like, gosh, the world is going to shit and I'm fine. I feel a little weird about that.
It's weird though, because their money's going to be useless if the economy fails. It's almost like
but none of them can do it alone.
Episode.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode. Anyway, speaking of a whole nother episode, we're at the end of this one. A whole nother episode. Hooray. And I don't know if you can tell by now, but we're starting to loosen up a little bit, huh? Feeling limber.
I'm not going to say anything about how loose you are.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. For more information on this and other episodes, head over to citizendogood.com and click on podcast. While you're there, register to log in and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from the community. We have been your hosts. Thank you to Mr. Raymond Wong Jr.
And thank you, Mr. Piscitelli. It's truly been 3 episodes in the making.
It has been something, that's for sure. For more information on this and other episodes, head over to citizendogood.com and click on podcast. While you're there, register to log in and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from the community. We've been your hosts. Thank you to Mr. Raymond Wong Jr.
And thank you, Mr. Piscitelli. It's truly been enlightening.
It's been something, that's for sure. And special thanks to you, our listeners. We save the best for last. You are the best and have been for years. Thank you for your support. We know it's painful and we love you. Intro music sampled from OK Class by Ozzy Jocks under Creative Commons license through freemusicarchive.org. Other music provided royalty-free through Fizzling Studios Inc.